In 2020, Xi Jinping called it China's assassin's mace, a hidden weapon so powerful it could bring entire industries to their knees without firing a single shot. He wasn't talking about an aircraft carrier. He wasn't talking about a hypersonic missile. He was talking about a battery. Right now, today, if you are driving an electric car or planning to buy one, there is a 70% chance the battery inside it was made in China. And here is the part nobody is talking about. Even if it wasn't assembled in China, almost every critical material inside that battery passed through Chinese hands at some point along the way. This is not an accident. This is the result of a 20-year industrial strategy so deliberate, so methodical, and so quietly executed that the West didn't see it coming, and now cannot reverse it. In the next 14 minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly how China built the most dominant industrial choke point of the 21st century. Mine by mine, refinery by refinery, factory by factory. And by the end of this video, you'll understand something most people are completely missing. This isn't really a battery story. It's the story of how the global economy quietly handed one country the keys to the entire energy transition. Let's get into it. Before we get to how they did it, you need to understand exactly how much they control, because the numbers are genuinely hard to believe. Take CATL, Contemporary Amperex Technology Limited. You've probably never heard of that name, but if you own a Tesla, a BMW, a Mercedes EQ Series, a Volkswagen ID4, or a Ford Mustang Mach-E, there is a good chance CATL built your battery. In 2025, CATL alone controlled over 38% of the global EV battery market. To put that in perspective, that is more market share than Apple holds in smartphones, more than Boeing commands in commercial aviation, more than Intel ever held in CPUs at the peak of its dominance. And CATL is not alone. BYD, yes, the same BYD that recently outsold Tesla globally, holds another 17% of the market. Add in CALB, Gotion, Eve Energy, and Sunwoda, and 6 Chinese companies now control almost 70% of every single EV battery installed on planet Earth. But here's where it gets interesting. Market share is just the surface. The real story, the story nobody is telling you, is what happens before the battery is ever assembled. Because that is where China's grip becomes almost surreal. A modern EV battery contains 4 critical components: a cathode, an anode, an electrolyte, and a separator. China produces approximately 70% of the world's cathodes, around 85% of anodes, roughly 82% of electrolytes, and about 74% of separators. Every layer, every chemical stage, every component. Even when a so-called Korean or Japanese battery rolls off an assembly line, the materials inside it almost certainly originated from a Chinese factory. But that is still not the deepest layer, because before any of those components can be manufactured, you need the raw minerals. And this is where the story becomes extraordinary. Here is a question almost nobody asks. Where do the minerals inside a battery actually come from? The answer, remarkably, is not China. Lithium comes from a triangle of salt flats spanning Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. Cobalt comes overwhelmingly from a single country, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Nickel comes primarily from Indonesia. Graphite is the one exception. China does produce about 79% of the world's natural graphite domestically. So, if China doesn't hold most of the minerals in the ground, how does it control them? The answer is one of the most brilliant and most underappreciated industrial strategies of the modern era. China didn't try to own the land. It owned the contracts. Here is the most striking example. In 2008, China and the Democratic Republic of the Congo signed what is known as the Sika Mines Agreement. The deal appeared simple on the surface. China would build roads, hospitals, dams, and critical infrastructure across the DRC. In return, Chinese companies received mining rights to Congolese cobalt and copper, resources estimated at roughly $50 billion in value over 25 years. Today, Chinese companies own approximately 80% of cobalt production in the DRC, the country that holds the world's largest cobalt reserves, and 80% of the mines belong to Chinese firms. But wait, it gets worse. In Indonesia, where over 30% of the world's nickel is mined, Chinese companies bypassed export restrictions by building nickel processing plants directly adjacent to the mines. They refined locally and shipped the finished product home. Companies like Tsingshan and Huayu Cobalt now dominate Indonesia's nickel sector so thoroughly that Jakarta has had to negotiate around them rather than against them. In the lithium triangle of South America, Chinese firms have spent over $24 billion locking in long-term supply agreements across Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. And roughly 2/3 of all the lithium that Chile exports goes to China, Total Chinese overseas investment in critical mineral mining and processing has now passed $62 billion, and between 80 and 95% of China's imports of lithium, cobalt, and nickel come from countries where China has already invested directly in the ground. Most people have no idea this is already happening. China doesn't need to win a war over the minerals, it already owns the supply. And the deeper you go into this story, the more you realize how far upstream the trap was set. Mining the ore is the easy part. The hard part, the part that actually makes a battery possible, is refining it. Raw lithium ore is worthless. You need to convert it into battery-grade lithium carbonate or lithium hydroxide, and that requires enormous chemical processing infrastructure, staggering amounts of energy, and decades of accumulated engineering expertise. This is where China made its most consequential move. While the West spent the 2000s and 2010s outsourcing manufacturing, celebrating quarterly earnings, and dismissing Chinese industrial ambitions as primitive, China was quietly building refineries. Not one or two, hundreds of them. Today, China refines approximately 60 to 70% of the world's lithium, around 73 to 80% of global cobalt, over 90% of the world's graphite, and nearly 70% of all nickel processing. Here is why this is the choke point that changes everything. Even if the United States discovered a massive lithium deposit in Nevada tomorrow, even if Europe found cobalt beneath the Alps, they would still need to ship that raw ore to China to make it usable. Because the US currently produces less than 3% of the world's refined lithium, and it produces zero refined cobalt or zero refined nickel from primary domestic ores. Zero. This is the trap. The West can dig up minerals, but it cannot turn them into batteries without China. And this was not an accident. It was engineered. Chinese refineries held three structural advantages that Western competitors simply could not match: lower energy costs, more permissive environmental regulations, and, most critically, direct government subsidies. While a Western refinery had to show a profit from day one, a Chinese government-backed refinery could operate at a loss for an entire decade. Beijing would cover it. The result? Western refining projects were systematically undercut on price and abandoned before they could scale. By the time the broader world understood what was happening, China had built a 20-year technical and industrial lead that is now extraordinarily difficult to close. And once you control refining, you control everything downstream. Which brings us to the third floor of the empire. Controlling the minerals is one thing. Manufacturing the cells, the actual building blocks of a battery pack, is where China's vertical integration becomes almost terrifyingly efficient. China now controls approximately 85% of global battery cell production capacity by value, not dominance, near monopoly. Consider BYD again. The name literally translates to build your dreams. But what makes BYD genuinely extraordinary is not its cars. It's the fact that BYD mines lithium, refines lithium, manufactures cathodes, builds battery cells, assembles battery packs, produces electric motors, designs its own semiconductors, builds the cars, ships them on its own cargo vessels, and sells them through its own dealerships. There is no other automaker on Earth, not Tesla, not Toyota, not Volkswagen, that owns every single link in the supply chain like that. And this vertical integration is precisely why Chinese EVs cost roughly 20% less than equivalent Western or Korean models. When you own every step, you eliminate every margin in between. The savings stack, and they stack hard. Here's where it gets really interesting. LFP batteries, lithium iron phosphate, a battery chemistry that uses zero cobalt and zero nickel. Cheaper, safer, longer lasting. Just a few years ago, LFP was considered low-end technology, the budget option. Today, over 80% of the EV batteries produced in China use LFP chemistry, and the West is scrambling to catch up. CATL and BYD didn't just adopt LFP, they perfected it at scale. Tesla now sources LFP cells from CATL for many of its standard range models. Ford went further, licensing LFP technology directly from CATL to build a battery plant in Marshall, Michigan. That deal triggered a political firestorm in Washington, precisely because of how clearly it exposed American dependence on Chinese intellectual property. Even when Western companies try to escape, they end up importing the playbook. So China controls the mines, the refineries, the cells, the cars. What comes next? Going global. And that process is already underway. CATL opened its first major European manufacturing facility in Debrecen, Hungary, at the end of 2025. BYD is constructing factories in Brazil, Thailand, and Indonesia. Chinese battery manufacturers are partnering with, and in some cases effectively absorbing, European and Southeast Asian automakers that simply cannot compete on cost. In November 2025 alone, BYD sold over 130,000 vehicles outside China, nearly 4 times its international sales volume from the same month the previous year. And this is where the story stops being purely economic and becomes geopolitical. China is not simply exporting batteries, it is exporting the dependency. Every factory CATL builds in Europe locks European automakers into Chinese technology, Chinese supply chains, and Chinese intellectual property for the next 2 decades. The integration happens quietly, plant by plant, deal by deal. The American response has been to raise the drawbridge, a 100% tariff on Chinese-manufactured EVs, restrictions on Chinese battery components in vehicles eligible for the federal tax credit, and as of 2025, the complete elimination of the $7,500 EV consumer credit itself. But here's the painful truth. Tariffs buy time. They do not build capacity, and without massive investment in domestic refining infrastructure, the United States will still be importing critical battery materials, directly or indirectly, from China for years to come. Europe faces the same bind. The EU's Critical Raw Materials Act represents a genuine effort to diversify supply chains. But as multiple analysts have noted, decoupling from China's deeply integrated battery ecosystem is a monumental undertaking. It will take years, possibly decades. And by then, the next generation of battery technology may already be Chinese. A 2026 academic study ran something called a Monte Carlo simulation. 50,000 separate scenarios modeling what would happen to global EV production if China experienced a moderate supply disruption. Not a war, not a total shutdown, just a moderate shock to the system. The result was staggering, a 92% probability of a severe global battery shortage. Near certainty. That is the level of concentration we're talking about. The entire global energy transition, the electric vehicles, the grid-scale storage, the renewable energy systems, rests on the assumption that one country's supply chain will continue to flow uninterrupted, indefinitely, and Beijing is acutely aware of that leverage. In late 2023, China began imposing export restrictions on graphite, testing the response. In 2024 and 2025, restrictions followed on select rare earth compounds and battery-related technologies. Each move was calibrated, each one carefully signaled. The message is unmistakable. This power exists, and it can be deployed. When Xi Jinping called this China's assassin's mace, he was not speaking metaphorically. He was describing a strategic asset, one assembled over 2 decades, acquisition by acquisition, that the rest of the world is only now beginning to fully reckon with. The West spent 20 years dismissing China's industrial ambitions as imitation. What it missed was the architecture being built beneath the surface. Here is what is remarkable about all of this. China did not arrive here through a secret conspiracy. It got here through patience, through policy alignment, through a long-term industrial strategy that the West dismissed as old-fashioned, right up until the moment it became unstoppable. The mines, the refineries, the cells, the cars, the export markets, every link in the chain captured one by one over 20 years, while everyone else was distracted. The question is no longer whether China dominates the EV supply chain. That chapter is closed. The question now is what happens in the decade ahead. Because as Chinese companies push into Europe, advance into solid-state battery technology, and scale sodium-ion chemistry, the next 10 years will determine whether any other nation even gets to compete. And there is a parallel story that is arguably bigger than this one. Because while the world has been watching batteries, China has been executing the same strategy, the same patient, methodical upstream capture with rare earth elements. The minerals inside every smartphone, every fighter jet, every wind turbine. And in that arena, the concentration is even more extreme. That video is linked right here. If this opened your eyes to what is actually happening at the foundation of the global economy, drop a like. It genuinely helps the channel. And I'll see you in the next one.